Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Uh, we have so far talked about the fertilization, how fertilization takes place. तो फिर हमने syngamy पढ़ा. Then we talked about triple fusion. Okay. As a result of syngamy and triple fusion, we have with us the zygote and the primary endosperm nucleus. First of all, today we will talk about the fate of zygote. zygote क्या बनाता है? ओके तो zygote अल्टीमेटली एक एम्ब्रियो बनाता है. पहले हमें देखना है एम्ब्रियो क्या है, एम्ब्रियो का स्ट्रक्चर क्या है. देन आफ्टर दैट वी विल टॉक अबाउट द development of embryo, how embryogenesis takes place, how zygote leads to the formation of embryo. Okay, then PN, the primary endosperm nucleus, its fate will be dealt with in a separate topic. हम डिस्कस करेंगे एंडोस्पर्म हाउ इट डेवलप्स. So without consuming much of your time, I will directly move to the embryo of dicots. Okay, embryo of dicots and embryo of monocots. आज हम बात करेंगे dicot embryo की. The zygote that that forms as a result of fusion of male and female gametes, that forms as a result of fusion of sperm and egg cell. It gives rise to an embryo by a predetermined series of cell divisions and cell differentiations. So आपके पास जो zygote है which has formed as a consequence of fusion of male and female gametes, this zygote, it will give rise to embryo. How? By a series of cell divisions and cell differentiations. So zygote, it will give rise to embryo after a series of cell divisions and cell differentiations. This whole process of the formation of embryo from zygote, this is known as embryogenesis. So what is embryogenesis? Embryogenesis simply means the formation of embryo from zygote due to a series of cell divisions and cell differentiations. The embryo, the mature embryo, it ultimately germinates because the embryo is present within the ovule. Okay, when you will place this ovule or seed in the soil, it will germinate. The embryo then comes out, okay, and it grows into an adult plant. In seed plants, embryogenesis, that means formation of embryo, occurs within the embryo sac or female gametophyte of the ovule. जो embryo sac होता है ovule में, उसी में embryogenesis हो जाती है. Now the structure of dicot embryo. How a dicot embryo looks like. A typical dicotyledonous embryo, which is comprised of an embryonal axis and two embryonic leaves, which are named as cotyledons. Okay, so you can simply remember that a typical dicotyledonous embryo, it is comprised of an embryonal axis with two embryonic leaves, which are known as cotyledons, and these two cotyledons, they are attached to the embryonic axis laterally. The portion of the embryonic axis above the level of cotyledons is called epicotyle, and the terminal point of the epicotyle is known as pilumule. This pilumule or embryonic shoot, it later on gives rise to the future shoot. याद रखना. The portion of the embryonic axis above the level of cotyledons is called epicotyle. The epicotyle terminates into a point which is known as pilumule. This pilumule, also named as embryonic shoot, it later on develops into the future shoot of the plant. The portion of the embryonic axis below the level of cotyledons is called a hypocotyl. The hypocotyl, it terminates into a point which is known as radicle or embryonic root. This embryonic root later on develops into the future root of the plant. So you can here see you have this embryonic axis. Okay, this is the axis, and you have two laterally attached cotyledons. This point here, the portion of the embryonic axis here above the level of cotyledons here, this is known as epicotyl, and this epicotyl, it terminates into a point here. This point, the terminal point of the epicotyl, is known as pellimule, and this pellimule, or you can say embryonic shoot, it later on develops to form the future shoot of the plant. And likewise, the portion of the embryonic axis below the level of cotyledons, from this to this, from this point, okay, below the level of cotyledons here, you can see these are the cotyledons. Below the level of cotyledons, this point is known as, this region is known as hypocotyl. The hypocotyl, it terminates into a point which is known as radicle. Here, this point is known as radicle, and this radicle or embryonic root, it develops into the future root of the plant. Okay, and in addition to radicle, we have here the root cap, which protects the radicle, or which protects the embryonic root. Okay, so simply stated, the dicot embryo consists of an embryonal axis and two laterally attached cotyledons. The point, or you can say the region of the embryo above the level of attachment of cotyledons is known as epicotyl. The terminal point of the epicotyl is known as pellimule or embryonic shoot, which develops into the future shoot of the plant, and the portion of the embryonal axis below the level of cotyledons is known as hypocotyl. Hypocotyl terminates into a point which is known as radicle or embryonic root. This embryonic root develops into the future root of the plant. And one important thing you will here remember, that the radicle or the embryonic root, it is covered by a region, it is covered by a group of cells which are known as, which form the root cap. Okay, this root cap, it is very much important because the root has to grow through the soil. Okay, this root cap, it gives protection to the embryonic root. So this is all about the structure of the dicot embryo. In the next part, we are going to talk about the development of dicot embryo. Till then, take care.